May 11, 1997, Santa Monica, California. While the rest of the country was celebrating Mother's Day, George Carlin was watching the light go out of his world. Brenda, his wife of 36 years, had just lost her battle with liver cancer. The timing was a cruel cosmic joke. Brenda died exactly one day before George's 60th birthday. For decades, she had been his anchor, his producer, and the buffer between him and a world he often found exhausting. What happened next is one of the most remarkable chapters in comedy history. Instead of retreating, George Carlin leaned into the darkness. His grief built the darkest, most honest, and arguably the greatest decade of his legendary career. Before he was the counterculture icon, George was part of a clean-cut comedy duo with Jack Burns. They were successful, appearing on variety shows, but George was already feeling the itch to be something more. To understand the depth of the loss, we have to go back to 1960. George was part of a comedy duo with Jack Burns. They were in Dayton for a gig when George met a 21-year-old hostess named Brenda Hosbrook. The duo was a safe bet, but George's mind was elsewhere. He was listening to jazz, reading Kerouac, and starting to see the absurdity in the very society he was entertaining in a suit and tie. It was a thunderbolt moment. Brenda was sharp, funny, and shared his sense of humor. According to family lore, she invited him back to her place because she had a hi-fi stereo. George quickly confirmed she did. They were married less than a year later on June 3, 1961. Brenda wasn't just a spouse, she became the architect of his life, helping him navigate the transition from a suit-and-tie comic to a counterculture icon. The early years were lean, the Dodge Dart years. After their daughter Kelly was born in 1963, they lived a transient existence, traveling across the country to whatever small-time gigs George could find. Kelly recalls sliding around in the back of that car as they drove through the night. These were the formative years, where the bond between George and Brenda was forged in the fire of uncertainty and hard work. By the early 70s, the suit was gone. George had grown his hair, donned a beard, and started telling the truth about the 7 dirty words. It was a radical pivot that nearly cost him his career. As George's fame exploded in the 70s, so did the pressure. The household became a battleground of substance abuse. George was heavily into cocaine and marijuana. Brenda was struggling with severe alcoholism. He found a new audience, the counterculture. They saw him as one of their own, a man who spoke their language and shared their disdain for the status quo. Brenda was right there, managing the chaos. The three musketeers, George, Brenda, and Kelly, were fracturing. The drug-fueled bickering and violent scenes became a regular occurrence, hidden behind the public face of success. The breaking point came in 1975 during a family vacation in Hawaii. 11-year-old Kelly, distressed by her parents' behavior, wrote out a handwritten contract for them to sign. She made them promise to stop using cocaine for the rest of the trip. It wasn't an overnight fix, but it was the first sign that things had to change if they were going to survive as a family. Recovery began in the 80s. Brenda was the first to find sobriety through Alcoholics Anonymous. She stayed clean from day one, providing a new foundation for George to find his own way back to health. George's path was more difficult. After a series of heart attacks and a severe car accident, he realized that, in his words, "There are no jokes in a vial." He sought help and finally got clean. They booted their relationship. Brenda became the executive producer of his iconic HBO specials. She managed the business, protected his time, and encouraged his most daring creative shifts. Together, they built the Carlin empire. She was the one who saw the potential in his darker, more philosophical material, pushing him to be the honest voice that defined a generation. Their daughter Kelly saw it all. She saw the brilliance and the madness. She remembers the Dodge Dart years not as a hardship, but as a long, winding adventure with two people she adored. But then, the stability was shattered. Brenda was diagnosed with liver cancer. She had survived breast cancer before, but this was different. The fight was fast, and the outlook was grim. She was the glue that kept them together during the darkest drug years. Her 1975 contract wasn't just a child's plea, it was a wake-up call that probably saved her parents' lives. George spent every moment he could by her side. The man who made the whole world laugh was now facing his greatest fear. The buffer was fading, and he wasn't ready to let go. Brenda died on Mother's Day, May 11, 1997. She was only 57. For George, the timing was particularly cruel, one day before his 60th birthday. The celebration he had planned was replaced by a void. The Three Musketeers were broken. George was devastated. He had spent 36 years with this woman, and suddenly, the house was silent. The man who always had something to say was speechless. Within weeks of her death, George was back on stage. People wondered why. How could he perform when his heart was shattered? The answer was simple. The stage was the only place he knew how to be honest. He didn't just return to comedy. He transformed it. He took the raw, unvarnished grief and used it to fuel a decade of work that was darker, more cynical, and more profound than anything he'd done before. Specials like You Are All Diseased and Complaints and Grievances saw a new Carlin. He was no longer just the hippy-dippy weatherman. He was a prophet of the absurd, dissecting a culture he saw as increasingly hollow. He stopped caring about offending people. He spoke about death, religion, and the big electronic toilet of society with a ferocity that was born from his own confrontation with mortality. The specials they produced together in the late 80s and early 90s are the gold standard of stand-up. Brenda's influence was everywhere. The pacing, the lighting, the raw honesty. They were at the top of their game. In his 2005 special, Life is Worth Losing, he reached a new peak. Mortality wasn't a tragedy anymore. It was the ultimate punchline. He was laughing at the void and inviting us to join him. She protected him from the suits and the censors, allowing him to be as dark and daring as he wanted to be. Without her, the Carlin we know today might have been a very different performer. Critics called it his dark period, but fans saw it as his most authentic. Without Brenda to buffer him, he was face to face with the world, and he didn't like what he saw. So he joked about it. Then, 6 months after Brenda's death, a thunderbolt struck again. George met comedy writer Sally Wade. He wasn't looking for love. He had told friends he needed a year to be alone. But the connection was undeniable. Sally became his cake, and he was her cookie. Their relationship, documented later in her book, revealed a tender, romantic side of George that the public rarely saw. She brought a new light to his final decade. They held a private, unregistered wedding in 1998. For the next 10 years, they shared a deep, playful, and intellectually vibrant life. Sally was the partner he needed for the final stretch of his journey. Even as his health began to fail, George never stopped writing. He was constantly observing, constantly questioning. The untold stories of his final years were ones of resilience and a refusal to go quietly. His heart, which had been through so much, was finally reaching its limit. But his mind remained as sharp as the day he met Brenda in Dayton. He was ready for whatever came next. In June 2008, George Carlin's own heart finally gave out. He died in Santa Monica, the same city where he had lost Brenda 11 years earlier. The man who had dissected death for decades was now part of it. In the year after Brenda died, George wrote more than he had in the previous 5. The grief was like a floodgate opening. He couldn't stop the thoughts, so he put them into the act. George always joked about his epitaph. He hated euphemisms for death. He said everyone always says, "Geez, he was just here a minute ago," and he wanted that as his final word. The result was a level of vulnerability that few comedians ever reach. He wasn't just telling jokes, he was sharing his soul, and the audience felt every bit of the pain and the power behind it. He didn't get a headstone, he was cremated, and his ashes were scattered in his favorite places. But the joke remains. He was just here, a perfect summary of a life that moved too fast and said too much. George Carlin's legacy isn't just the 7 dirty words. It's the honesty he found in the wake of his greatest loss. Brenda's death didn't end his career. It gave it a new, profound purpose. He showed us that grief doesn't have to be silent. It can be loud, it can be angry, and most importantly, it can be funny. He turned his pain into a mirror for the rest of us. His philosophy in the final decade was one of radical acceptance. He saw the world for what it was, a beautiful, terrible mess, and he found peace in being the one to point it out. He often said he was a perennial outsider, looking in on a planet he didn't quite belong to. Brenda's death only reinforced that feeling, making him the ultimate observer of the human comedy. So when we look back at the life of George Carlin, we see more than just a comedian. We see a man who loved deeply, struggled greatly, and found his true voice in the face of his greatest sorrow. He was just here, a minute ago, and though he's gone, the echoes of his laughter and the sharp edge of his truth remain as vital as ever. George Carlin, the storyteller of the untold. Can comedy be a way of grieving? Tell us in the comments when laughter saved you. We want to hear your stories of how humor helped you through the darkest times. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the untold story of George Carlin, subscribe to George Carlin, The Untold Stories for more. We're dedicated to uncovering the humanity behind the legend. I'm Brian, and it's been an honor to share this journey with you. Check out these other stories on your screen now for more untold stories of the greats.